So here's the $1,000,000 question. How are people like us, who don't settle for the status quo, who value freedom and a life without limits, how do we create extraordinary results in the key areas of life, yet skip the fear, stress, and anxiety that produces regret? This is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. I'm your host, Tom Hermann, and welcome to the Attractively Different podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Attractively Different podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hermann, and this is part 2 of the story on how I was able to get unstuck in life and find my purpose. Now, I'm not going to review that here, so if you missed the beginning of the story, go back and listen to the first episode. And what I'll do is I'll pick up in the story where I'd made a promise to myself to change. I was in the car driving home from visiting my wife's family, knowing something needed to change, and I was going to make it happen. And I decided to start creating a plan for our finances and listening to Dave Ramsey's radio show. And one day he dropped a statistic that really just rattled my brain and essentially changed my path in life forever. And what he said is, he was saying, did you know that the average millionaire reads a book a month? So that's 12 books in a year. And he said that may not seem like a huge amount, like a whole lot of books over the course of a year, but most Americans haven't read a nonfiction book since their high school or college graduation. So if you just read one book a year, you actually have a higher competitive advantage than your peers in the marketplace who haven't read a book since high school or college. And that blew my mind. There it was. There was the clue, or there was a clue that I was looking for. So millionaires, someone who's created an extraordinary result, they read a book a month versus the average American who hasn't read a book since graduating high school or college, since they left formal education. So this was obvious to me that apparently people with extraordinary results, they think differently. They do things differently. They keep learning, is what the millionaires do. That was my epiphany. My epiphany was I needed to keep learning. My education didn't stop when I graduated high school. I need to keep learning. I need to consistently grow my skill set and flood my mind with new ideas. That was my epiphany. If I could read one book a year, I would have a competitive advantage at work. Think if I actually read one book a month, like a millionaire, could I be a millionaire? And so I made the goal to read a book a month. And I was dedicated to becoming a lifelong learner and start thinking like people who produce extraordinary results. And it was amazing how quickly I saw results. Within a year of making that commitment, I got accepted into a leadership program at work for like the future leaders of the company. And I had received 2 promotions. People began to comment about ideas that I had and the insight that I brought and the wisdom, around certain situations. And they were just kind of fascinated by it. And in my mind, I'm kind of laughing where it was just like, I'm just kind of like borrowing these ideas from the books that I'm reading. And I realized that, they're not reading books. They don't have access to these ideas because they're not reading books. So when I bring them to the table, they're like, that's new to them. So it was this result that I saw in my life from reading and learning and being focused on continually learning, that I was adopting new levels of thinking. And these new levels of thinking were leading to different actions, and they were creating different results. And I started to feel more fulfillment in my work. I was excited. There was some significance there as I started to see good results and results that I hadn't seen before that were, pushing the limits on extraordinary, because that was my goal. However, there was something in me where I still didn't feel completely free. It's like there was something that was just kind of nagging at me. It's like was in position as one of these future leaders to be promoted and become a high-level leader. And why did I feel kind of unfulfilled, or like, what was it? I needed to find something. And I was continuing to read, so I was dedicated to being a lifelong learner. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what that was until I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, if you're not familiar with the book, it's written by Robert Kiyosaki, and it's his personal story about how he learned about money and business, and he compares and contrasts views of his real dad, who he calls his poor dad, and his friend's dad, who he calls his rich dad. Now, his friend's dad owned a business, and his real dad was a professor at the local university. And he said when he was growing up, his dad's point of view was that you should study hard, get good grades so you can find a safe, secure job with a big company, and make sure that company has excellent benefits. Now, my jaw's sitting here hanging open because that was the exact same thing that I believed. If you listen to episode 1, you'll hear that I had done everything right. I had done what I had been taught. I got the good grades. I got the degree that made sense. People liked me. I had success doing these things, and yet it didn't pan out. I was in a corporate job that had amazing benefits. I was targeted as one of the future leaders of the company, in position to really grow. I had received a bonus for the work that I'd done that year that, it ended up being close to, $20,000 as after it got paid out. It's like I was rewarded for the work that I was doing. And yet there was something that was just didn't sit well with me, that was still nagging at me. And so it caught my attention when he's like, my poor dad had this view that you should study hard, get good grades so you can find a safe, secure job with a big company that has excellent benefits. And so I thought, okay, well, what does his rich dad have to say? What does the business owner say? And he talked about knowing how to get your money working for you and essentially becoming a producer instead of a consumer. And there was the line that really just rattled me, and I'll probably never forget, is that Robert Kiyosaki said, my poor dad didn't understand that by relying solely on a paycheck from a corporate employer, I would be a docile cow ready for milking. Now that it hit me hard, and I'll read it again. He said, my poor dad didn't understand that by relying solely on a paycheck from a corporate employer, I would be a docile cow ready for milking. Like I said, it hit me hard, but it was encouraging because that was the enlightenment that I was looking for. That solved the nagging that I felt, because it was able to articulate something that I couldn't articulate before. So despite my recent success at work, the thing that was nagging me was the fact that I was the docile cow ready for milking. I wasn't implementing, ideas that his rich dad, I wasn't making my money work for me or creating systems of cash flow. And so I knew that was the next level. That was the time to go to the next level, take my continual learning to a higher level. By simply reading books, I have adopted new ideas and strategies, and those new ideas and strategies led to different actions and greater results. But I was now actually faced with a new course. I needed to take a different step in a different direction, and I needed to start looking at work differently. And I knew at that point, after reading the book, I needed to create a system of cash flow. I needed to create something that would generate consistent cash flow. And so I knew and had the desire to start a business. And so my wife and I had an opportunity to start a business with a home-based business, direct sales. And we took that step, and I had no clue how many hidden benefits I would find in doing so. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. It's the third and final part of this introductory story of the Attractively Different podcast. So stay tuned and listen to that. But I also do want to say, if you'd like to learn more, I've created a life purpose roadmap for you. And it's simple. It's a 7-step framework to discover your life purpose and step into it. It's also free. So feel free to go download it and check it out. It's at attractivelydifferent.com/purpose. And love to serve you in that way. And we'll be back on the next episode finishing this 3-part story. Hey everyone, it's Tom again, and I wanted to ask you a quick question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how confident are you that you know God's purpose for your life? I mean, there can be a lot of confusion around this topic, so I went ahead and created a life purpose roadmap to help you gain clarity on your purpose. You can download your free PDF, Life Purpose Roadmap, at attractivelydifferent.com/purpose. It'll walk you through the 7 simple steps to prospering in your purpose. Also, for the next 40 days, I'll be sending you a daily email guide that will help you unlock the full power of the roadmap. These emails are designed to make it that much easier for you to implement the roadmap and succeed in your God-given assignment. It's free. Just go download the Life Purpose Roadmap PDF at attractivelydifferent.com/purpose.